And further, that through a ritual like the lesser ritual of the pentagram, non-Jewish magical practitioners practice Judaism, or they practice at least Jewish magic, without necessarily knowing that it's Jewish. Just as the same way today Jewish people are practicing Jewish magic, but without knowing that it's magic. So I'd like to, I think at this point, do a demonstration of the rectified ritual and then analyze the different parts and let you know where I've come from. So, Lecha, Hagedula, V'Hagevura, V'Hatiferet, V'Hanetzach, V'Hahod, Ki kol bashamayim, Uva'aretz, Lecha, Hamamlacha, V'Hamitnase Lechol Lerosh, Me'olam V'ad Olam. Amen. Yah-vah. Adonai. Eheyeh. Ata gibor le'olam, Adonai, Agala'ah. Milfanai, Gavriel, Umeachorai, Raphael, Mimini, Michael, Umismoli, Uriel. Ve'al Roshi, Bo'er Chotam Shlomo, Uba'amud Nitzav Magen David, Shchinat El. Lecha, Hagedula V'Hagevura V'Hatiferet V'Hanetzach V'Hahod, Ki kol bashamayim uva'aretz. Lecha hamamlacha V'Hamitnase Lechol Lerosh, Me'olam V'ad Olam. Amen. So, the first thing that you probably have noticed about my rectified lesser ritual of the pentagram is that it is all in Hebrew and not in a mixture of Hebrew and English. You may also have noticed that I have reversed the directions of the Kabbalistic Cross so that Gedulah is on my right shoulder and Gevurah is on my left shoulder. You may have noticed that I used all 7 of the lower Sefirot and not just the 4 in the Kabbalistic Cross as it has come down through the Golden Dawn tradition. The angels are in somewhat a different order a different location than perhaps that you're used to, and that I pronounce some of the God names a bit differently than how it's also done in the traditional lesser ritual of the pentagram. So I think if we start with the Kabbalistic cross and then analyze the other two parts following, you can get some understanding of where I've come from with this. So in Jewish Kabbalah, the tree of life maps onto your body, but in the same way that you see it. So that, and this is different than the way the Golden Dawn does it, which reverses the tree on your body as a mirror image. The Jewish sources say that the right-hand path of the tree maps to the right-hand side of your body, as if you were stepping into it. The tree, you have a front and a back, humans do, but a tree does not. The front is whatever side you're approaching it from. So the right side of the tree is your right side. The left side of the tree is your left side, and obviously the center doesn't change. So I keep the tree on my body as if I am the tree. So I have Gedulah, which is Chesed, on my right, and also Netzach is on my right. On my left is Gevurah and Hod. Tiferet is at the heart, Yesod is at the genitals, and the ground is Malchut, which is the earth. The language that I use in laying out the Kabbalistic cross on my body comes from the first book of Chronicles, chapter 29 rather, verses 10 and 11. This language is the prayer that David, King David, offers when they're about to start breaking ground for what will become Solomon's temple. So he does not do the building himself, but he's offering a prayer to God for creating this temple. In other words, he's clearing the space through this prayer and sanctifying it, consecrating it for the work that's to come. And what he's saying is, yours, O God, Lecha Adonai, are the greatness, the Gedulah, the power, Gevurah, the love, the Tiferet, the victory, the Netzach, and the Hod, the splendor. And that all that's in the heavens, and I locate that on my genitals with Yesod, and because it's a source of divine pleasure, and that's on the earth, and that's where I locate Malchut, all that is in heaven, Kol Bashamayim, that's in heaven, Uva'aretz, and on the earth is yours. Lecha Adonai, yours, Adonai, is the mamlacha, is the kingdom, the governance, the government, the running of things. V'hamitnaseh lecha l'rosh, and you sit exalted above the height of it at its head. Of course, it's not God, it's me, the magician, you, the magician. But we are creating this same space, dedicating what is going to become our ritual space, just like David did. Me'olam, from this universe, this time-space continuum, ve'ad olam, and to infinity and beyond. Me'olam, ve'ad olam, Amen. So mote it be. This language, this particular verse of Chronicles, is familiar to a lot of people from Christian backgrounds as being the Lord's Prayer from the book of Matthew and from the book of Luke. And it's a prayer that Jesus gives. Jesus is getting it from David, from the book of Chronicles. And he's also creating sacred space with it and evoking the temple as well as his Davidic lineage, his kingship. Jews use this language today when they take the Torah out of the ark on Sabbath and holidays, and the Torah is circumambulated around the temple, and all of the congregation has an opportunity to share some love with the Torah in the form of either taking their prayer books or the fringes of their prayer shawls and touching the Torah and then kissing either their prayer book or their fringes like I have. They're taking love and giving love to the Torah. Again, this is very similar to the priestess circumambulating around the temple in the Gnostic Mass before, when here it's before she is put behind the veil. In the Jewish ceremony, it's reversed, and it's after she's taken out from behind the veil. I'll just leave it right there. But just to say that as the Torah is being processed about the synagogue, the congregation is singing that particular verse. And this has been a part of Jewish liturgy, the earliest, since the Middle Ages. There's a manuscript from 1237 from the German Ashkenaz Hasidim community, the Pietists, where there's a marginal notation that when the cantor or the service leader is saying a certain line, that the congregation whispers this verse under their breath. And by the 16th century, this has become said out loud and appears in all the standard prayer books, manuscripts, and even when they start being printed, now it's printed in all the prayer books. So this is something that is said very frequently. It's also said at other points during the service, but I just offer it here as a way of saying that this is put into the service at the moment of highest communion and contact with the divine through the divine word of Torah. So, we have talked about the Kabbalistic Cross and its organization on the body. And we have talked about where this verse is used in, or has been traditionally used since the 13th century. It may have been used earlier than that, but the 13th century is the first manuscript notation we have of it in writing. So they may have been doing it before, but just informally and without writing it down. But from starting in the early 13th century, we have written record of this being part of this service. The rabbis of the Zohar, who are working also in the 13th and 14th centuries, have taken this verse. It's one of the most popular verses for them to riff on in the Zohar. And they've identified all of the divine attributes with the sfirot. even though some of the language is not the same. So Gedulah is not Chesed, but it's also another name for Chesed, just as Din, justice or judgment, is another word for the Sephirah of Gevurah. But David, who's a poet, or whoever is writing the poetry that is put in David's mouth in the book of Chronicles, he's a poet and he's paying attention to the language. And Hagedulah v'Hagevurah has much more poetic resonance than Chesed v'Gevurah. So we can understand that these mean the same thing and that we're getting some poetic effect here. How does this come to the lesser ritual of the pentagram? Well, the very short version of that story is Christian Hebraism and Christian Kabbalah has also a very long history in Europe. And the communities of Jews and Christians, while they were often at odds and antagonistic, were also living very closely together and learning a lot and borrowing a lot from each other. And there's a tradition of Christian Hebraism. So a figure like Johannes Reuchlin in the 16th century is working with Rabbi David Kimchi on translating the Kabbalah from the Hebrew, the Zohar, from the Hebrew that it's in, to Latin. He also gets called up before the Pope for spending a little too much time with the Jews, but that's another story. There's also, coming after him, Protestant Hebraists who are also trying to figure out alchemical, esoteric secrets that are in Jewish texts. And they too are looking at the Hebrew, but also at the now existing Latin translations and working on their own. And some of these folks in Germany were affiliated with the Rosicrucian movement that gets started in Germany in the 17th century. This makes its way to a figure like Eliphas Levi in the 19th century, who is looking at various texts, but who also has training as a Catholic priest and some minimal kind of elementary basic literacy perhaps in Latin and Greek and in Hebrew, so that he's able to look at texts like he already knows in French, like the Bible, and in translation in Latin, the Vulgate, and in Greek, the Septuagint, and he's able to, as well as the New Testament, which is also written in Greek, and is able to take from there these elements, but that these phrase from Chronicles is a foundational piece of magical text that has been in use since the mythical times of King David and the mythical time of the creation of the first temple. And it too has intertextual reference with earlier creation of the temple, that is the tabernacle, the Mishkan, that is in the desert after the Israelites leave Egypt and slavery and come into the wilderness and set up a temple to the divine. And so we have use of language like this that echoes all the way back to this very first temple that's created in the desert. And this will also become more clear as we move on now to the mid part of the ritual, which is the pentagrams and the divine four-letter names that are projected into their midst to energize them. So the very first name in this pentagram is the Yod He Vav He. This